Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to the fourth Grand Prix weekend of the season and the return to Bahrain. Of course, we were here in Bahrain about 6 weeks ago, or 7 weeks ago, something like that, for pre-season testing. We didn't find out a huge amount back then, but obviously we know a lot more now about our cars for 2025. And maybe looking at the running so far, it's maybe not as close as I thought it would be and hoped it would be, but I think it will still be, to a degree, a close session today. Especially, even if McLaren do dominate the session, and let's say McLaren lock out the front row, if you look at the few positions behind them, Mercedes, Ferrari, obviously Max and the Red Bull, it is still pretty close between those cars and drivers. So we are in for, I think, an interesting qualifying session here in Bahrain this evening. And it should be a good one. I personally think it will be quite a bit closer between McLaren and the rest of the field. I'll get onto my reasons why in a moment by going through the data from practice 2, which is the only practice session we've had so far that means anything, because obviously it takes place in much more representative conditions compared to the first and final practice session. Obviously, the final practice session finished about an hour ago. So, yeah, we'll get into that data and I'll get onto why I think it will be a bit closer, quite a bit closer than it looked in practice 2. But yeah, qualifying in Bahrain normally does tend to be pretty exciting most of the time. So I don't think we're going to be massively disappointed. We'll get probably a couple surprises. And yeah, it'll be a good day of fighting through the field, obviously through qualifying laps. Hope you guys are well. Of course, I've not chatted to you guys in about a week since the Japanese Grand Prix. And I hope, no matter what time zone you're in or what part of the world you're from, I hope you guys are doing all good. And I hope ahead of this session that you'll be joining me in watching along and enjoying qualifying in Bahrain. Of course, if you can't watch the session but you want to keep up to date with what's going on, then this is the best place to be, as I'll keep you absolutely bang up to date with everything going on in qualifying here in Bahrain. And because I didn't do my qualifying preview on a Friday night like I've done for the first 3 Grand Prix, of course, that qualifying preview I'm going to be giving a bit of a rest for a few races. We are going to basically do, in this next hour and 25 minutes, what we would do in a qualifying preview stream, which is go through the data from Friday practice, looking at the sector time data and the overall lap times, and judging just who is quick and who can find a lot more pace and what it should look like pace-wise going into qualifying. And then, of course, I will give my predictions for qualifying and go through some stats, some key stats for the teams and drivers ahead of qualifying. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're going to do this next hour and 25 minutes. From you guys, I want to hear, who do you think will take pole position and who do you think is going to qualify, say, in the top 3 or top 5? Let me know in the live chat. And of course, there's a poll running in the live chat where I've asked you guys who will take pole position for the Bahrain Grand Prix. Will it be Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, or Charles Leclerc? Out of those 4, who do you think takes pole? Or if you think maybe George Russell or Kimi Antonelli can get pole, let me know in the chat. Definitely, it's going to be, I think, quite a bit more mixed up than practice has shown us so far. And talking of practice, I think we'll just get straight into the results of practice 2. I'll just hide that countdown, obviously. So, in the darkness of practice 2, McLaren not just got a 1-2, but they were miles ahead, seemingly, of the rest of the field. I mean, half a second clear, that is miles ahead of the rest of the field. But as I will show with the sector time data, that is a bit skewed. This, overall lap time difference between McLaren and then Mercedes, Ferrari, and even the Red Bull of Max Verstappen. McLaren are not as far ahead of those teams as it may appear. It's definitely not as big of a gap as it appeared in practice too. Again, I will illustrate why when we go through the sector time data. But Piastri, ahead of Norris and Oscar, has been, since practice 2, really, clearly better than Lando. And if there is a favourite for pole position, it would have to be Oscar Piastri. With the form he's in, and especially how he, compared to Lando, has really sorted out his qualifying performances compared to last year and the year before, Piastri, I think, really is the favourite this weekend. Not just for qualifying, but if he does get pole, which he probably should, then you'd think for the race as well, he'd be the clear favourite for victory. But Piastri looking very, very good in the main McLaren. And then Lando Norris in second, 10th and a half back. Norris not quite coping brilliantly with the handling of his McLaren, but pole position absolutely on offer for Lando. And if he has to, if he can, try and get it, because with McLaren looking so quick here, and after what happened at the last Grand Prix, McLaren have to respond to what Max did at Suzuka championship-wise. George Russell third, Mercedes looking pretty good yesterday, and in general just have a good car around this track. Whether it's good enough to be fighting for pole position, probably not, but it's a good enough car definitely to be on the second row of the grid, I think pretty clearly here in Bahrain. Charles Leclerc fourth in the Ferrari. Ferrari, very disappointing, their pace in practice so far, and they are nowhere near as quick as I really hoped they would be at this point of the weekend. They are not in the fight for pole position. Absolutely no way. They would need to produce some unbelievable lap, one of the two drivers, to get themselves anywhere near pole position. I don't think Ferrari are massively sandbagging compared to McLaren. I do think to a degree Ferrari had their engine turned down probably a bit more than McLaren, but not massively to the point where Ferrari have secretly got pole position level pace. I don't believe that's the case. Kimi Antonelli then in fifth. No real surprise that he's a couple tenths back on Russell. Russell is still pretty clearly the best driver at that team. But Antonelli right in there for Mercedes, which is good for the team. It means that if Mercedes do have a really good, strong pace today, that they can get a good, strong result, with both drivers. Isaac Hadjar, sixth for Racing Bulls, continuing his absolutely brilliant form in 2025. I have to say, though, quite surprising just how good Racing Bulls are here. I was not expecting them to be anywhere near as quick as they are. You can see 3 tenths of a second, 3.5 tenths quicker than the Haas car of Behrman, and 4 tenths of a second quicker than the Williams. I thought the Williams would be probably a tad quicker than the Racing Bulls car, honestly, this weekend, because I just thought this track was a bit more suiting towards the Williams. But that doesn't appear to be the case. Racing Bulls appear to be very strong and have easily the strongest midfield car, to the point where they're even on the tail end of those front runners, which we saw to a degree at Suzuka. Just, incredible pace from them, and incredible pace from Isaac Hadjar, who is doing such a brilliant job in that team and in that car. And then Max Verstappen, P7. He definitely has a lot more pace, and Red Bull have a lot more pace in that car. There is zero doubt in my mind about that. Whether it's enough to be on pole position, I would say probably not, but he has a lot more pace in that car. I think definitely to be at least third on the grid. So if you're a Red Bull or Max Verstappen fan, don't worry. There is a lot more pace in there, and there's no need to be massively concerned, I would say, with the pace shown in practice too from Verstappen. Absolutely, though, you could be concerned if you're a Lewis Hamilton or Ferrari fan with Lewis Hamilton's pace, quite a bit off of his teammate. We know Bahrain is not one of Hamilton's strongest circuits, but yeah, half a second off his teammate was quite poor, I must say. And only just ahead of Oliver Behrman and Carlos Sainz, who completed the top 10. Great job by Behrman, by the way, to be in the top 10 in a car that I'm not sure is really top 10 material this weekend, at least in quali trim. And then the rest of the field, Alex Albon just outside of the top 10, and then Liam Lawson in P12. Bortoletto 13th, very impressive lap time he did, considering the Sauber is one of the slowest cars on the grid this weekend. Doing in 14th, ahead of his teammate Gasly by 10th and a bit, which is impressive. Gasly, we know, pretty quick around this Bahrain track. So yeah, doing a great job, no pun intended. Alonso in 15th, Aston Martin, just an absolute shit show they are. Alonso's steering wheel fell off in practice too, so that wasn't a great start to his practice session. But Aston Martin genuinely have no pace. They are... I think you could say they have the slowest car on the grid this weekend. I think Sauber probably do have a tenth or two over them around this track. And that is just shocking to say when this time last year, Aston Martin were well over a second a lap quicker than Sauber. Yet now they're slower than them. Ocon 16th in the Haas. He can definitely do a bit better than that. Gasly 17th. You'd imagine Gasly can do a bit better. Gasly, I mean, if he was to be ahead of Doohan by a couple tenths like he normally is, Gasly may even be a contender for the top 10. So Alpine, watch out for them because, you know, they might not be as far off the pace as maybe it seems. Yuki Tsunoda 18th. Also, I think Red Bull's sandbagging quite a bit with him. I don't think Tsunoda is going to be 18th on the grid. I think he'll be definitely getting into Q2. And actually, I think this is a much better chance for him to get into Q3 here compared to Suzuka. So, yeah, watch out for Tsunoda because I think he will have a bit of a better weekend. Lance Stroll then 19th, just ahead of Nico Hülkenberg in 20th, and Sauber and Aston Martin definitely the two slowest cars this weekend. But as I said, the other three frontrunners, Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, appeared to be quite far off McLaren in practice too. But again, the sector time data shows that actually those teams just didn't quite deliver the potential of what they could do in certain parts of the lap, and that's what has added up to that gap being so big. For example, in the first sector, Mercedes very, very strong, but Ferrari a tenth of a second off. We know that Ferrari in qualifying really should be, you know, if they're not the quickest in the first sector, they'll be very close to it. So Ferrari definitely can find, I think, another tenth of a second in this first sector. Also, Red Bull, I think, can find another tenth of a second in the first sector. I would be surprised if the McLaren was quicker than the Red Bull car in the first sector in qualifying. So straight off the bat, Ferrari and Red Bull have definitely got more pace in this first sector. And those two teams, without a doubt, had their engines turned down a bit more than other teams. I'm not saying massively more, but just a bit more. And then after that, you've got Racing Bulls, very impressive speed in the first sector. Haas as well, pretty impressive. Williams, okay. Maybe could be a bit better. I think, in the first sector, but it's okay enough. And then Aston Martin just behind, and then Alpine and Sauber. But really, the middle sector really does make your lap quite a bit here. And just look at how quick and how far ahead McLaren were in practice 2 in the middle sector, where, again, that's where the McLaren really shows its dominance over the rest of the field. Because in the medium and slow speed corners, McLaren have the best car through those types of corners, no doubt about it. Ferrari, I don't think were really sandbagging through this part of the lap. I just don't think they really have any more pace. We know the Ferrari car in medium or slow speed corners is really not that good, and is definitely not as good as the McLaren. So, personally, I don't think Ferrari can find more pace in this part of the lap. Red Bull, though, I think definitely can. I think Max can find at least another couple tenths, if not 3/10 of a second, put them clearly ahead of Ferrari in this part of the lap. So Red Bull definitely, I think, have got more pace. Also, though, Mercedes, as you can see, slightly slower they were than Racing Bulls in this part of the lap. Now, we know that's not going to be the case in qualifying. Mercedes will be, quite a bit quicker in this part of the lap in qualifying. And I think Mercedes also, you can expect them to be an extra, say, 3/10 of a second better off in this part of the lap. So Red Bull and Mercedes, no doubt, have got more pace in the bag in this middle part of the lap. And if I was to guess, I would say the reason they didn't show that extra pace in practice 2 was probably because the Red Bull and Mercedes car probably had a bit extra fuel on board, which would be, which would explain why the pace was a bit slower in the middle sector compared to what it really should be and what you would expect it to be in this part of the lap. So yeah, definitely can go quicker, but McLaren, I think, still definitely have got the best car through this part of the lap. And then, yeah, Racing Bulls, very good pace through this part of the lap. Williams, pretty good as well. Alpine, not too bad. Haas, okay. Sauber, not too bad. And Aston Martin, absolutely terrible in the middle sector. And then the final sector, you've got a medium speed penultimate corner, then a longish straight, and then the final corner, which is a bit of a tricky corner, but most drivers do handle it just fine. And then, of course, a bit of an acceleration until the start-finish line. So it's, pretty much 2 slow to medium speed corners and 2 longish acceleration zones. So there isn't really going to be much separating the teams necessarily through this part of the lap. And as you can see, McLaren and Mercedes on basically the same pace in this part of the lap. So for Mercedes, it's just that middle sector. If they can just be, like I said, say 3/10 of a second better off in the middle sector, and at least quicker than Ferrari in the middle sector, then I think Mercedes definitely will have a good qualifying. They won't be on the pace of McLaren. McLaren definitely have a better car, but they can get closer, no doubt about it. And then Ferrari, a 10th off. I think Ferrari can find probably another 10th of a second at least, if not another 10th possibly, in this part of the lap. But definitely at least a 10th of a second, I think they can find in the final sector. Because for them to be that far off in just, the final sector, which is not that complicated and has 2 longish acceleration zones where they should be pretty quick with the engine they've got, which is very powerful. There's no real reason for them to be that far off in just quite a short sector. Racing Bulls, once again, very good, and once again proving they've clearly got the best midfield car in all parts of the lap. Ocon is supposed to say the Haas for Ocon, not the Alpine. Sorry about that. But Haas looking quite strong in the final sector. Williams not too bad. Sauber not too bad. Aston Martin not great, but a tad better overall compared to everybody else. Alpine, not great. And then Red Bull were the slowest team in the final sector. But of course, we know that is not going to be the case in qualifying. They will be, at the absolute worst, the fourth best team in the final sector in qualifying. So they can find easily another, quarter of a second in just the final sector. At least another quarter of a second. But honestly, I think they should be finding another probably 4/10 in this final sector. So once you add up the time that Red Bull should be able to find over the course of the lap, I reckon they're leaving so far probably another 7, maybe 6-7 tenths of a second on the table. So they have got, Red Bull, in my view, no, they have got a lot more pace in the bag than what they've shown. They just need to show it. So yeah, Red Bull, watch out for them in qualifying. They have got a lot more pace in the bag. I have no doubt about that. Mercedes, I reckon, have got another third of a second probably to find, and I think they will find it. So they will get closer to McLaren, will Mercedes, but I don't think they'll be close enough to fight for pole. I don't think they've got quite good enough of a car to do that, unfortunately. Ferrari, I reckon, at best, have got another quarter of a second they could find. But even if they were to find that, I don't think it gets them anywhere near pole position, I'm afraid. So, point is for Mercedes, Red Bull, and Ferrari, those three teams, they can, and I think will, find a lot more pace in qualifying than what they've shown so far compared to McLaren. But whether it'll be quick enough to put those teams on pole is another story. And I think, quite honestly, will be too difficult to do. McLaren, even though they are not as far ahead of those other teams as practice 2 has shown, I still think McLaren do have the best car. And if I was to go through what I think the pecking order will be, I'd say definitely McLaren quickest. Second, I would probably go... It's difficult to say because of Max in the Red Bull. You can't really... It's hard to tell just how much of the pace of that Red Bull is the Red Bull or how much of it's Max. But I think it'll be McLaren quickest and then Red Bull second with Max, mostly because of Max. Third, just behind, will be Mercedes, and then just behind them will be Ferrari. And then fifth, pretty clearly Racing Bulls. Sixth, I think, will be Williams. And then seventh, I'm going to go Haas, just ahead of Alpine, eighth. And then Sauber, I'll go ninth, with Aston Martin in P10. That is the pecking order I am expecting in this qualifying session coming up in just over an hour's time. And with that pecking order, let's go through what I think the top 10 from qualifying will look like, with obviously the predicted gaps. So I am going for Oscar Piastri to take pole position in Bahrain. It'll be his first pole position in Bahrain, and it would be, funnily enough, I can't believe this stat, and it is true, it would be McLaren's first ever pole position in Bahrain. And Piastri, I think, will take that today. Max Verstappen, because he's Max Verstappen, will somehow drag his car onto the front row of the grid in second, just ahead of Lando Norris, who is not quite having the best weekend, and that will open the door for Verstappen to get onto the front row. Fourth will be George Russell. Fifth, Leclerc. Sixth, Antonelli. Seventh, Hadjar. I think Hadjar will just creep ahead of Hamilton, who is clearly struggling this weekend. Yuki Tsunoda, ninth. I think Tsunoda will make the top 10 because I think the Red Bull definitely has improved. That is clear to see. Over the last week or so, I think the Red Bull, they've found a better way with that Red Bull car. And I think Tsunoda, you could see from practice was closer to Verstappen and is definitely getting better in that Red Bull car. And I think will make the top 10. And like I said, qualify in ninth. And then P10, I think will be Alexander Albon in the Williams. Yet again, I think he will make Q3. But there you go. That's what I think the top 10 will be. Let me know, guys, in the live chat, who do you think takes pole? Will it be Piastri? Will it be Norris? Or will Max Verstappen deliver another astonishing lap yet again to take pole position for the second week running? Let me know in that poll or in the chat, and I'll get to your comments soon enough. As I'm just waiting quickly for the next minute to tick over so I can get the timer on screen and have it show the correct amount of minutes to go. As I'm just watching the end of the F2 race, by the way, which is absolutely mental. There's been a late safety car, and now we've got loads of different drivers on different tyres and cars all over the place, basically. And yeah, great stuff, as usual, in F2. But there you go. Just over 1 hour to go until qualifying begins in Bahrain. We will still go through the teams respectively and how I think they should all get on and what they should aim for in qualifying. And like I said, right before we get into the session, I'll go through some key stats for the top teams ahead of the session. But for the next, half an hour or so, I want to hear from you guys. Make sure, by the way, to smash the like button. We're on 14 likes. Let's try and get up to 30 plus likes if we can in the next half an hour. That'd be great if we could do that. Let me go to the start of the chat and read out some of your comments. Busy Child asks, is the McLaren illegal? No. And I know this flexi, is it flexi rear wing or front wing thing people still going on about? Obviously, the FIA will be fully clamping down on that at the Spanish Grand Prix. Red Bull believe that McLaren will probably lose a tenth or two from that. I don't think fundamentally that's why McLaren is so quick. I mean, yeah, it might make a bit of a difference on certain weekends, but yeah, I don't think McLaren's pace being good is all down to a flexi rear wing. I don't believe that for a second. As by the way, this F2 race is just absolutely mental. We just had 4 cars side by side into the penultimate corner and somehow didn't have a massive crash, even though they did have contact with each other. As we're watching, I think Dino Begenovic, I think his name is, who is a Ferrari Academy driver, who is going for the lead and is probably about to win this race. He's a driver that Ferrari have got high hopes for, and maybe we'll see him in a Ferrari car in a few years' time. Possibly in F1, maybe in the next year or two. But yeah. Yeah, the McLaren I don't think is illegal. No way. Astro says top 5 on the grid. McLaren front row, Piastri ahead of Norris, and then Russell third, Hamilton fourth, and Leclerc in fifth. To be honest, that's kind of around what a lot of people have been predicting coming out in practice. But again, I personally, looking at the sector times, think that especially Red Bull have got a lot more pace in the bag than what they've shown. So, yeah. I think McLaren getting pole is absolutely, they are the favourites to do that. I think there is no doubt about that. But it's not going to be as surefire of a thing as people think it is. Piastri and Norris will have to deliver their best laps if they want to get pole. They cannot just rely on, the car being miles ahead of the rest, like maybe they were to a degree at Suzuka. Because that's what allowed Max Verstappen to get in there and just about get on pole position, was because both Norris and Piastri failed to do their absolute best laps at the very end of qualifying when it mattered. And if that happens again here in Bahrain, then I think Verstappen will be there to capitalise yet again. So, yeah, they have got to be careful and have got to deliver this time around. As, yeah, it is all kicking off in this F2 race. Begenovic has now gone down to 4th because I think we've got fresh soft tyre runners coming through the pack, such as Pepe Marti and Richard Bashaw, who are just, absolutely sending it. Astro saying Behrman really impressive again. Is that pace representative? I think Williams have got more pace in the bag, and I think Williams will be ahead of Behrman in qualifying. But I think Behrman, if you're going to get a surprise top 10 runner, he's probably one of them to look at. It should be, out of the midfield, it should be Hadjar and one of the Williams cars in the top 10. And maybe if Tsunoda and the Red Bull can't get in the top 10, then probably, say, both Williams cars. So, yeah, Behrman really, in that car, should not be getting in the top 10. So if he can get in the top 10, then, yeah, that would be a great performance from him. Because that Haas car is not, whilst it's, I think, got quite a bit of potential and is definitely not a bad car like we thought it was in Melbourne, what do you call it? It is not one of the best midfield cars. The two best midfield cars are the Racing Bulls and Williams cars, pretty clearly. Those are the two best cars from the midfield pack. So, yeah, it'd be a great job from Behrman if he was to sneak in. Make sure to keep these comments coming and keep the likes going as well. We're up to 23 likes. Like I said, let's try and get up to 30 or even 40 plus if we can in the next half an hour. Nick says, I think it'll be difficult for Verstappen to interrupt the McLarens in a track like this. Probably, yeah, it'll probably be harder because this is not really a driver's circuit like Suzuka is, where the driver can definitely make much more of a difference. But I still think he will be in there enough to the point where the McLaren drivers will have to deliver their maximum performance to make sure they keep safe from the possibility of another Max Verstappen pole or race win. So, yeah, maybe that type of performance from Max last week is less likely here. I think you could definitely argue that. But we'll see. We will see. But, I mean, theoretically, McLaren should be getting a front row lockout here. Not by a million miles. I don't think they're going to be, half a second or more ahead of the rest of the pack. I don't think that'll, be the case. But they've got the best car, and their two drivers. Sorry about that. Are usually quite evenly matched in qualifying, at least if you look at this year. So, yeah, like I said, it should be a front row for the McLaren team. Let me find some other comments here. And no chance of rain. Absolutely no chance of rain. This is actually why I like coming to this Grand Prix, because You don't have to worry about the weather forecast, which is sometimes a bit annoying with other tracks, especially other, like when we go to, like, the British Grand Prix or Spa. You have to constantly worry about the forecast, not in a bad way of, uh not in like a way of like hoping it doesn't rain, because of course when it rains it really makes things quite exciting, but sometimes it can rain a bit too much to the point where we get delays. So that's the one thing I really do not want. So yeah, that's the positive of these Middle Eastern races, is you don't have to worry about that sort of thing. But yeah, the next Grand Prix where we could get maybe some rain is Miami, but most of the time it's pretty hot and sunny in Miami. So yeah, might not be getting any rain for quite a bit on the calendar. Looking at again the races coming up. Um, David asking, what if Piastri and Norris crash out of the race tomorrow? Well, Max Verstappen will be delighted, obviously, with that, because that would allow him to probably win the race and take the lead comfortably of the championship. But I don't think Oscar and Lando are really that likely to crash with each other. They're both, pretty smooth with one another. I mean, Lando, as much as we criticize him for his racecraft, he doesn't really crash into other cars really that often. And hasn't had many crashes in general in his career that I can remember. So, yeah, it's pretty unlikely, I would say. Rook's asking, what do you think about all the rookies who got to drive an FP1? Six of them, wasn't it? Yeah, it's quite a lot of them. Yeah, good for them. To get some running in a Formula One car in a practice session, but not all of them, I think, will, make it onto the grid. I know, was it Frederick Vesti and Felipe Drugovich did the session for their respective teams, which was Mercedes and Aston Martin, respectively. But those two drivers are definitely not going to be on the grid. Their chance is gone. But yeah, Max Verstappen had his car taken over by Ayumu Iwasa, who's a Formula 2 legend at this point. Luke Browning was in the car for Williams. Dino Beganovic, who just had a crazy end to his F2 sprint race there, he was in the Ferrari. And we had Ryo Hirakawa, I think it is, in the Haas. So I think maybe Browning and Beganovic you could see on the grid maybe in the future. I'm not sure about Hirakawa because I've never heard of the guy. But yeah, good for them. But whether it will lead to anything, who knows at this point. Hello to Yanni. Good to see you. Crawford saying the restraint from Marty was so good, only driving with a head on their shoulders in the race, picking battles and not defending air. Yeah, well, I just watched the end of that F2 race, and yeah, he did really well to keep it together with all the madness going on and take the lead when he did, and then win. Remember, I think, one thing that people do forget, and I think racing drivers do forget it sometimes because they're just so, they just want to win and want to get into the lead as early as they can all the time. It doesn't matter when you get into the lead of a race. All that matters is that you're leading when you come across the finish line to finish the race. That's all that matters. I think famously, what was it? Jackie Stewart even said The aim is to win the race at the slowest possible speed. So it's not all about dominating and winning by a country mile. As long as you just end up winning the race, that's all that matters. Whether you win by 0.1 of a second or win by a full lap, it really is irrelevant. A win is a win. And just making sure that you are the winner by the end and keeping your head cool and calm is what it's all about. And yeah, Pepe Marti did really well there to what do you call it, to maintain his head and to deliver. Drugovich basically matched Lance Stroll's time, lol, says Astro. Yeah, Stroll is just, I know he had the first couple races of the season were pretty decent from him, but since that Japanese Grand Prix, he has just been miles off of it. And to be fair to him, the car is bad, so it's not like it's the car of 2023 or anything. But yeah, he has really dropped off of it. Astro asking, can Doohan save his seat? Do you think Chaz are hoping so? What will he need to do that? And any signs he's still suffering from the effects of that crash in Japan? He did say after the race in Japan that he was physically still hurting from the crash in Japan. He was still sore, still aching a bit. So, that must have had a slight effect on his performance in the race, which was actually not that bad. He ended up not that far behind Gasly, despite starting at the back of the grid. For Doohan, it's, he just needs to try and, what he did yesterday, beat Gasly. If he can start beating Gasly, even if he doesn't score points, the team will take note of that, because it's not like Gasly has already scored points in the first couple races out of the 3 races we've had so far. Alpine have no points, so they are just looking for anything they can get right now. So if Doohan can start beating Gasly, not every race weekend, but just maybe once every 3 race weekends, and in the race weekends where he is slower than Gasly, he's not much slower, then that would be, I think, at least good enough to maybe, allow him to continue in that car, going into the European season. But if he keeps crashing and ending up miles behind his teammate, then Colapinto will be in that car. That's pretty likely if he keeps doing that. You says Hamilton needs to realise that Leclerc is Ferrari's priority and always have the faster car. I don't think that really is why Hamilton is behind Leclerc, though. Leclerc is faster than Lewis Hamilton because, he just is. Leclerc is in the prime of his career, around about, I would say. Lewis Hamilton is definitely past his prime. And yeah, Leclerc is just faster. I don't think it's a case of Lewis needing to accept that, the Leclerc. Leclerc is the priority of the team. Leclerc is simply quicker, therefore will automatically be the priority. Hamilton just needs to focus on his own performance. That's what he needs to do. Astro asking, is George Russell underrated here? Dark horse a possible winner if McLaren's miss out somehow. Honestly, yeah, I would say he is a dark horse for a really good result. Maybe not a race win, but still a really good result. If you remember last year here, qualified 3rd in the first Grand Prix of last year here in Bahrain, which, given how bad that Mercedes car was in the first quarter of the season, was an unbelievable lap from Russell. And he ended up finishing in, what was it, P5? which again, looking at how bad that Mercedes car was in those opening first few races, was an unbelievable race weekend from Russell. So if he could replicate that type of form in terms of his own driving, there's no reason that Russell couldn't have a strong result this weekend. But championship wise, because Mercedes have still not really upgraded this car, that's what they're waiting for, really, is to get some upgrades on the car so that they can really start, fighting for wins. Because the fundamental car is really good. It just isn't as good as the McLaren, which is really, really, really good. So, yeah, once they get upgrades on this Mercedes, they will no doubt be fighting for wins, as long as those upgrades, of course, actually do work and synchronize to the track and actually improve the pace of the car. In the meantime, though, if Russell could get a podium this weekend, that would do nicely to keep him, especially if Norris doesn't win this weekend. That would keep him nicely within reach, because he's only, he's 17 points behind Norris. So, Russell really needs to keep that gap within, or he needs to make sure that gap doesn't get over any more than, say, 30 points. And at the minute, like I said, it's currently it's currently 17 points for or the gap between Russell and Norris. Norris obviously leading the championship. So, yeah, if Russell can get on the podium this weekend and Norris does not win, then that would be a great weekend for Russell. Really would. Let me see if I can find some other comments here. Hello to Crystal Racing. Good to see you. And make sure, as we've already got quite a bit more watching here, make sure if you haven't already to smash that like button. It does help the channel grow in the algorithm, and also helps show me that you guys actually enjoy the content. So let's try and get up to 50 plus likes if we can. So by the time qualifying gets underway, which, as you can see on the screen, is 40 minutes time until we get to qualifying. And as well, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, as we do qualifying and race watch-alongs for almost every Grand Prix. Of course, this is the first weekend since Australia, which was about a month ago, that I've done, or going to be doing, both a quali and race watch-along for the same Grand Prix. So yeah, make sure to subscribe for more content like this, and so you can be around for the upcoming watch-alongs, because I'm going to be doing both. Obviously, I'm doing this watch-along now. I'll be doing a race watch-along tomorrow. I'll be live at 2 p.m. UK time tomorrow. 2 hours, that is, before the race, to cover the race. And my co-commentator Niblo will be joining me as well for the race tomorrow. And then next week in Saudi Arabia, I will be doing, yet again, a qualifying and race watch-along. So make sure to join me for all those streams. So, let me read out a few more comments, and then I'll post the link of the stream out again, and probably go on to the teams quickly, just to have a quick roundup in regards to them. Tarwo Power saying, hi Chazza, hello to you. How are you? I'm good, especially with how great the weather's been in the UK lately, my part of the UK at least. What are you thinking? Boring race tomorrow, not many overtakes, I suspect. Annoyingly, Pirelli have once again brought the 3 hardest compounds, the C3, C2 and C1, which is really annoying. I would have thought they would have brought the C4, C3 and C2. That's what I was expecting, but for some reason they've gone conservative again. Luckily, they are bringing some softer tyres, not obviously for this Grand Prix, but I saw for the race at Imola, which is in about a month from now, they're going to be debuting a new compound, being the C6 compound, which will be obviously a step softer than the C5, and then you'll have the C5 and the C4 tyre as well. So that weekend at Imola, we should have at minimum a 2-stop race, possibly even a 3-stop race if it's, a really hot weekend at Imola. So yeah, we will see whether that's the case. But yeah, for this race, I think we should still get quite a bit of overtaking because you can overtake here. There are so many places you can overtake, and the field is pretty close. So yeah, I think it will be a better race than what we had a week ago. But whether it's like much better to the point where it's like a really good race, we'll have to find out. But it'll be better than last week, no doubt. Last week was probably the worst Japanese Grand Prix I think we've ever had. Let me see if we got any more comments here. Astros and Colapento was a bit crash prone during his stint last year, wasn't he? Towards the end, yeah, but when he was on it, he was really good from what we remember. I remember, was it not Bahrain, Baku? He finished, was it 8th? I think in the Williams, or 7th, something like that. And obviously, was it US Grand Prix as well? I remember he finished in the top 9 after starting nearly at the back of the grid. So he showed some clear potential there. And yeah, he could definitely do a job for Alpine. But if Doohan can prove they can do the same job, then they may as well keep doing. But yeah, we will see. Reverse grid is what's needed? Absolutely not. I really hope that never happens. I'm surprised though they haven't tried it. Liberty, because they are known for their stupid ideas. At least I think they're stupid ideas. Let me see if I can find any more comments that I haven't quite got to. Just having a look. Vettel Hamilton says, I have to say, Lewis saying he has a broken floor since the start of the season would just make all of his fans saying he's being sabotaged, which is ridiculous to me. I don't believe that for a second. I think maybe the balance of the car is suiting Leclerc maybe more than Hamilton. Maybe, you could say that, but no way is Hamilton has had, a broken floor. I just don't believe anything remotely close to that. And, if anyone is actually believing that that's why Lewis Hamilton has been off the pace, then that is absolute rubbish. And in terms of his fan base, I think a lot of them just can't accept the truth that he is past his prime. Doesn't mean he isn't still great. He is, but he is not the Lewis Hamilton of before. That is pretty clear to see. And it's not really a surprise either, because he is, 40 years old. So you would hope that eventually, or at least if you're a rival, you would hope that eventually he would slow down. And appears he has. But he still has the potential to win some races and get some podiums. One thing that doesn't help right now, his results especially, is the car he's in. That Ferrari car is not a good car. It's not. It's not good enough to fight for pole. It's not good enough to win races at all. And it's not even good enough to be on the podium. So even if Lewis is not on the pace of Leclerc, it doesn't matter really, because he wouldn't be on the podium anyway. Would Lewis Hamilton? So yeah, that's just the way it is. Lewis, yeah, maybe isn't performing at his very best, but there are bigger issues at hand if you are Ferrari. Hello to Brabham. Good to see you. Obviously, one of the regulars. Astra saying, I hope Lewis wins some races for Ferrari later this year. Monza would be perfect. Well, initially, in my season prediction video, which I did right before the first Grand Prix, I did say that I thought Lewis would win the Italian Grand Prix. And I don't support any particular team or driver, but that would be great to see. Lewis win at Monza in the Ferrari. That would be just an absolutely incredible sight. And it is, not necessarily impossible because, yeah, Ferrari at the moment, they are not great, but they will probably improve. At least you'd hope they would. And obviously, once we get to the Italian Grand Prix in early September, you would hope Ferrari would have a race winning car by then. But they definitely don't by now. And as I said in my video, which I made a couple weeks ago, you can go and check out, by the way, on my channel. I think there is a link to it in the description as well. I made a video about why Ferrari's championship chances in 2025 are almost over. Honestly, I think after this weekend, we can say pretty clearly that Ferrari's championship chances are completely over. Because they're not going to get pole. And I would be very, very surprised if they won the Grand Prix this weekend. So, yeah, I think by the time I make my podcast on Monday, I will be proclaiming that. I'm pretty sure I'll be proclaiming that Ferrari are out of the title race on both the drivers and constructors side, because the car just isn't good enough. Anyway, before I do any or read any more comments out, just let me just quickly post the link of the stream out one final time before we get into this session. So let's just quickly do this. Come join us here to Watchalong qualifying in Bahrain. And there you go. But yeah, we have got half an hour to go until what should be, I still think, a pretty exciting qualifying session. Even though McLaren are the favourites, doesn't mean they'll get pole. Look at a week ago at Suzuka, and we know with Max Verstappen, who will be a lot quicker in this session, we know that he is capable of special things. So you just never know. And that's why we are all here, to find out just who will take that pole position. Pole position has been pretty successful in these last few years. Well, last 3 years. The pole sitter has won the last 3 Bahrain Grand Prix. Before 2022, though, the person on pole went a few races without winning. 2021, Verstappen took pole that weekend, didn't win. Leclerc was on pole in 2019, obviously didn't win. 2020, Hamilton did win the Bahrain race, but then the Sakhir Grand Prix, Mercedes locked out the front row and obviously ended up not winning. 2018, pole position won. 2017, pole position did not win. So only lately has pole position been a surefire thing for victory around this track. So the point I'm trying to make is His pole position obviously is important, but it does not mean everything. Because remember, second place on the grid has the inside line for turn one, which is the line you want, especially if you get the better start. So even if Max or Russell somehow puts it on the front row of the grid, that would still be good enough. But just going to see if there's any news on Twitter quickly. And no, can't see anything at the moment. So, yeah. We are, just not that far away from qualifying. Let me just read out, though, a few more comments before we just do a quick roundup of the teams as to how I think they'll all get on and what they should, what they should all be aiming for. How long is Lewis's contract? Asks Brabham. It is only until the end of next year, but I do think there is an option for a third year, which would be 2027. So, yeah. I would not be surprised if this and next year is his final 2 years in Formula One. Would not be surprised about that at all. Astro saying too early to make that call, say Chazza. I don't think it is. I've seen this story before with this team, and yeah, I think I don't think they're championship material whatsoever for this year. And as Brabham says in the chat, Ferrari probably better to focus on next year if their, say, first big upgrade of this year doesn't, work out. And they will need a mega upgrade, as Brabham says Ferrari could do. They will need a mega upgrade if they are to get into a position to even think about fighting for the championship. But the reason the Ferrari car is not good enough is because fundamentally it just doesn't have the grip, anywhere near the level of grip that McLaren have got. I think fundamentally Mercedes have got a better car, and I think this season has proved that. I would say the Ferrari fundamentally is better than the Red Bull, but Red Bull have Max, who is clearly the best driver on the grid. And that Red Bull car, we know, will get better because Red Bull are good at developing a car over the course of a season. When again with Ferrari, you can't trust them when it comes to that. So, yeah, I just don't see it. I would love if Ferrari were in the championship, fight. Trust me, that's what I was really hoping for this season. But just from when we got, through that first Grand Prix weekend, I just never really had a great feeling about them, and that negative feeling has only continued. So yeah, I mean, we will see. If I'm wrong, great. I hope I am, but I don't think I will be. If I was to say right now on the constructors side, who are the championship contenders, I would say McLaren, Mercedes, and to a degree Red Bull, but that's only really because of Max. Are they contenders on that side? Ferrari, I don't think have a chance on the constructors side. They're already miles behind, like 80 points or something behind. And that gap's only going to grow in these next few races before Ferrari do potentially get better. And on the driver's side, I think you've got 4 to 5 contenders at the minute, possible contenders for the championship, being the top 5: Norris, Verstappen, Piastri, Russell, and Antonelli. Leclerc and Hamilton, I think already, especially in a car that is clearly slower, are too far behind. So, yeah. As I said coming into the weekend in my podcast a few days ago, Ferrari and Leclerc have to win this Grand Prix. If they do, great. They're in the championship hunt, at least on the driver's side. But if they don't, and they can't even get on the podium, it's over. No doubt in my mind, it is over. But I would love, like I said, to be proven wrong. Brevin saying, I think F1 fans should all be relieved Piastri has stepped up this year. It definitely is helping, I think, this year's excitement towards the championship, because instead of it just being Max versus Lando yet again, Oscar now is right in there. And really, I think Oscar is a better bet for McLaren on the driver's side than Lando. I just think Oscar is a better race driver. And now he's sorted out his qualifying pace quite a bit. I think Piastri is, I think he is the better or the stronger bet for McLaren for this season. I know he's behind Lando in the championship, but it is only 13 points. If Oscar wins this race and Lando finishes outside, let's say Lando finishes third, then that gap goes straight down to 3 points between the two. So, yeah, that gap easily can be overturned pretty quickly, I think. Anyway, make sure to keep voting in that poll, by the way. Still running at the top of the chat. Let me know, who do you think takes pole position? Will it be Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Max Verstappen, or Charles Leclerc? Let me know in that poll. Anyway, let me just hide the countdown, because let's just do a quick roundup of the teams and how they should do in qualifying. For McLaren, they do have the fastest car for qualifying. There is no doubt about that. They are not as far ahead of the other teams as, again, Practice 2 showed. That was a bit extreme, Practice 2, in terms of how much quicker they were. But those other teams definitely were not showing their strongest pace. McLaren, their aim, though, has to be a 1-2. It is definitely possible. They just have to, the two drivers, deliver their absolute best laps when it matters, which is something they didn't do at Suzuka, which is ultimately why Verstappen got pole and really won the last Grand Prix. And Max Verstappen will still be in there, so they have to deliver those two drivers, Piastri and Norris, because if they don't, Max will be in there and will pick up the pieces that McLaren leave out there if they do not deliver what is clearly there to be delivered in what is the fastest car this weekend. Red Bull definitely are in the conversation this weekend for a top 3 or so, no doubt about it. Red Bull, obviously, having Max Verstappen is a big help for this team. The car obviously was not a race-winning car at Suzuka, but Max made it one by being just so incredibly good a week ago, and he will continue that form, I am sure, today and this weekend in general. So Verstappen, I think, will be, if the McLarens are locking out the front row, Max really should be best of the rest in third place. But again, if McLaren's drivers do mess up and don't quite hit the sweet spot with their final laps in qualifying, there is the chance for Verstappen to get a front row or even pole position if McLaren do mess things up that much. But even for me, I think that is maybe just a bit too far for Max this weekend compared to a week ago. But we'll see. After last weekend, really anything is possible with Max Verstappen in your car. Ferrari, I really hoped would be in the fight for pole here. I thought they would be very quick around this track, at least in qualifying trim. But they're not. They are really not. They are looking to be probably the slowest, I think, of the top 4 teams. Mercedes look better than them, definitely handling-wise. The car clearly better than the Ferrari car. And yeah, Ferrari just struggling at this point of the season. And I would be amazed if they ended up, say, in the top 3 on the grid. If they were to get that, that would be a really great result considering how this weekend has gone. But I don't see Ferrari getting top 3 on the grid at all. I think you're looking more at 5th on the grid at best for that team. If they can maybe get ahead of Mercedes, then P4 is possible, but I wouldn't say is absolutely super likely for them. But yeah, it is. It's going to be a tricky session for the Ferrari team. If they've got a lot more pace in the bag that they were secretly hiding and they're going to show it here, great. But I really don't think they've got the car that we were all hoping they would have for this Grand Prix. Mercedes have got a very good car. Maybe not pole position worthy, but it's definitely a very good car. A car that could potentially lock out the second row of the grid. The only thing that they need for that to happen really is, one, for Russell to deliver his absolute best lap, but for Antonelli to be right in there behind him, only say a tenth of a second at most behind. If Antonelli is a 2/10 or further behind, I think it is very unlikely that Antonelli will be able to be on the second row of the grid with George Russell. But a second row lockout, like I said, it is possible. And with Russell, watch out for him. Super qualifying he did here last year in a Mercedes car that was a lot worse than this year's car. And yeah, was third on the grid and was less than half a second away from pole position. We'll see what he can do in this session. But George Russell is absolutely someone we have to watch out for. He's been one of the best drivers on the grid in the last year or so. And yeah, Antonelli we'll keep an eye out for as well. But that Mercedes car is a dark horse for a possible surprise, great result in that top 3 or 4 positions on the grid. Now into the midfield. Aston Martin's car is an absolute shower of shit. Alpine, decent car, not very quick in the first and third sector, which is not really a surprise. Their top speed is still not great at times, but middle sector pace in practice 2 was looking pretty decent. I think there is the potential for them with, say, Pierre Gasly to get into the top 10. Whether they can get it, though, is another story. It is going to be very close for those final couple positions in Q3 between Tsunoda and the Red Bull, the Williamses, Behrman and the Haas, and probably, Gasly in the Alpine as well. But they're in that fight, no doubt about it. For the team overall, though, if they can get at least both cars into Q2, that would be a decent effort. For Haas, really, they should not be getting into Q3, but Oliver Behrman is having a great weekend. And if he can deliver an absolute stunning lap, then maybe he will just about sneak in to the top 10, which would be a fantastic result. Ocon can do a bit better. Watch out for him. He might be able to get a decent qualifying result. But yeah, Haas got a decent car, just not as good as the Williams or Racing Bulls cars. Racing Bulls have the best midfield car. Watch out for Isaac Hadjar. He's been so good this season, and this weekend has been so good as well. He should be, Hadjar, at worst, really given his pace this weekend, in 8th place. Maybe even can out-qualify one of the front-running cars like he did at Suzuka. For Williams, they really could get both cars into Q3. That should be their aim, to get both cars into Q3. Both drivers looking evenly matched on pace, and the car definitely quick enough to get into the top 10 with both cars. So we will see whether that is doable. But again, it's going to be very close between them, Tsunoda, Gasly, Behrman, maybe Ocon as well in that fight for the top 10. And for Sauber, they look quicker than Aston Martin, which is a positive for them. Look out for Gabriel Bortoleto. He's having a pretty good weekend, but I would be very, very surprised if they were anywhere near Q3. But here is a reminder of my final prediction for qualifying, with my predicted gaps, the predicted gaps that I think it will be throughout the field. Oscar Piastri, I think, takes pole. Max Verstappen, I think, will be just behind in second and splitting the McLarens on the front row. Lando Norris then third, Russell fourth, Leclerc fifth, Antonelli in sixth. Hadjar, I think, will just to get ahead of Lewis Hamilton, just like he did at Suzuka, in seventh. Hamilton eighth. Tsunoda, I think, will make the top 10 for Red Bull in ninth. And then Alex Albon will make the top 10 for Williams in 10th place. So that is my prediction, guys, for what do you call it? That is my prediction for qualifying. Let me know your predictions in these final few minutes and moments before we get into the session. And I will read out a few more comments before we get into things. By the way, the poll running at the top of the chat, which now has 1,000 votes. Here's for voting, guys. Make sure to vote if you haven't already. That poll will keep running until the start of Q3, which is in about an hour from now. Let's find some other comments here. Astro saying, cannot see Red Bull winning constructors with basically one driver. Ferrari could if their car improves and luck goes their way against McLaren. I think we can safely rule Sauber out of contention. I can, to a degree, I can understand why you still think Ferrari have a chance. I personally just don't think they do. I do agree, though, with Red Bull. I think their chances are pretty slim, purely because, yeah, they only have one driver to rely on in that team. So really, on the constructors' end, I can only see it being McLaren or Mercedes winning the Constructors' Championship. McLaren are, I think, the heavy favourites to win the to win the constructors, because they've got two very good drivers and they've got, at the minute, the best car on the grid. So McLaren really should be winning the Constructors' Championship, no matter what happens on the driver's side. Brabham asking, God, I'd love to see what Max could do. I'd love to see Max do a weekend in that McLaren. If Max was in that McLaren, the championship would already be over. Ricard Zubamendi says, for their prediction, Norris, he thinks will be on pole from Piastri. And then Verstappen, Russell, Leclerc, Antonelli, and Hamilton. Which is pretty much, well, not quite the same as mine, but not too dissimilar. Brabham says, I'm conflicted about that. I think Max can find the speed in his current car, but it doesn't mean he'd find as much in the Racing Bulls, but I'd love to know. It would be great for one weekend. I hope Racing Bulls keep up their speed, and Max, imagine if Max wins the championship before the final race and then they decide, oh, let's put Max in the Racing Bulls just to show how good the Racing Bulls could potentially be if Max was driving it. That'd be funny. But yeah, I think what do you call it? The Racing Bulls is a good car, but I don't think it's I don't think it's race winning worthy. And to be honest, I'm not sure if he Verstappen, I'm not sure whether he would have won the race last week in the Racing Bulls car compared to the Red Bull. So, yeah. But it is an interesting what if, isn't it? Another prediction from Vettel Hamilton, Piastri, Lando, Max, then the Mercedes drivers. That's their top 5. Let me just raise the picture there. By the way, good to see we've got so many watching, which is really good for this session. Obviously, this is the first for us in Europe. Normal time, normal time qualifying session, I guess you could call it. But for everybody watching right now, if you haven't already, again, smash that like button. Let's try and get up to 100 likes if we can by the start of qualifying, which is in, I know, only 10 minutes, but we've got an awful lot of people watching, which, yeah, very pleased to see. Let's see if there's any other comments that I haven't read. Dave Smithson says Oscar for pole. Yeah, Oscar is definitely the most likely for that pole position. As Sky on the broadcast is just showing Piastri, who is just having a chat to his engineer before the session. As we will be underway for qualifying in about 8 minutes' time. And in a moment, I will go through some final stats. As Nicholas Nutifi says, guys, Lawson will take pole, trust me. I have to say, Lawson has surprised me in just how disappointing he's been, even in the Racing Bulls car so far, since he went back to them. He looked really good in practice in Japan, and then was miles off of it in qualifying, and then even in the race, he had no pace, whilst his teammate was flying high. Less than 10 seconds had Jar finished behind Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari. Meanwhile, Lawson was nowhere in his car. I think 17th, was it? In the end, or 16th, something like that. And then, this weekend, Hadjar's been easily in the top 10, and Lawson just floating outside of the top 10. But he is another driver that we need to consider as a possible a driver who can possibly get into the top 10. And really, Lawson should be getting into the top 10. If Hadjar is going to be 7th or 8th on the grid, Lawson should be 9th or 10th. No doubt about it. So, yeah. There's no real excuse there for Liam Lawson. As Super Kev saying roses are red, Ferrari are shit. Well, is shit? Pretty much. Hello to Jazztastic. Good to see you. And I think I'll probably read out a couple more comments, and then we'll get on to these final stats and that before the session. Jazztastic says Lawson will come at least 20th, but no higher than 15th. See if there's any other comments I can find. And was Astro saying, can see Russell taking pole tonight, Mr. Saturday. Yep. He is that man. We've seen it before where he is just out of nowhere, pulled it out of the bag. And we might have to get used to him doing it later this season if that Mercedes car improves. But if he does it today, then I would be absolutely amazed, really, if he could do that. But the F1 intro is now playing on the broadcast, so that means it's time to get into these final couple stats that you need to know going into this session. Firstly, your championship standings. Coming into this weekend, Lando Norris 1 point clear of Max Verstappen. Norris, even if he doesn't win this weekend, has to beat Verstappen at least, because he cannot allow Max to develop confidence and momentum already at this point of the season in a slower car. Oscar Piastri third. Obviously, he really needs pole position and to win this weekend to eventually try and claim the lead of the championship. Fourth, George Russell in a good position championship-wise, only 17 points off the lead. Antonelli in fifth. He's also in a decent position. Leclerc sixth. Alex Albon in seventh, splitting the two Ferraris. Hamilton in eighth. Ocon still 9th and still in 10th, Lance Stroll. And on the constructors' side, McLaren 36 points clear already of Mercedes-Benz, Red Bull in 3rd, Ferrari in 4th, Williams 5th, 4 points clear of Haas in 6th, and then Aston Martin 7th. Racing Bulls went up to 8th a week ago. They'll be looking to get up to probably at least 7th after this weekend. Sauber in 9th and Alpine still pointless in 10th. But regarding the front-running teams, let's go through some key stats going into this session. McLaren, believe it or not, have never had pole position in Bahrain. Their best result in Bahrain is 2nd with Lewis Hamilton in 2012. They also had 2nd place in qualifying in 2007, also with Lewis Hamilton. But yeah, never have taken pole in Bahrain, despite being owned by a decent amount of their team, owned by a person from Bahrain. So yeah, they'll be looking to break that horrible record this weekend. Last year was probably their weakest race of the year, only on the 4th row of the grid with both cars last year. Surely they'll be a lot better than that. For Red Bull, obviously they had pole position here a year ago with Max Verstappen and have taken 3 pole positions in the last 10 years here in Bahrain, and those 3 pole positions have been in the last 4 years. So they have a great record recently here in qualifying to Red Bull. And yeah, last year were 1st and 5th in qualifying. For Ferrari, their last pole in Bahrain was 3 years ago with Charles Leclerc, of course, the first weekend of that year, where they ended up getting a 1-2 finish. They've had also 3 poles in Bahrain in the last 10 years, 2019 and 2018. They also had pole and locked out the front row on those weekends. Last year was 2nd and 4th in qualifying. They would be pretty happy with that result tonight. And for Mercedes-Benz, their last pole in Bahrain was in 2020 with Valtteri Bottas for that Sakhir Grand Prix, that infamous Sakhir Grand Prix. Mercedes, 5 pole positions in Bahrain in the last 10 years. And last year, 3rd and 9th here in qualifying. 3rd might be possible for them. 9th with the 2nd car you'd hope would be a lot better this year compared to a year ago. But here we are, ready for qualifying. And Q1 obviously will be a 18-minute long session. And I'll sync up the timer at the 17-minute mark. And as you can see on the left-hand side, the bottom 5 below the cut-off line. And obviously at the end of Q1, whoever is in that bottom 5 will be out of the session. Really, the drive, or the teams rather, at risk in this session is Aston Martin and Sauber. Those are the 2 teams to look at in terms of who could get eliminated in this part of qualifying. Alonso, you would imagine, would probably be able to sneak through because he's Fernando Alonso. But Stroll, Hülkenberg and Bortoleto, I think there's a pretty high chance those drivers will be eliminated in this part of qualifying. As qualifying has begun, and like I said, in about 40 seconds from now, I'll sync up the timer to the 17-minute mark, as the first car on track, I think, was, or is, an Aston Martin, who have had a disastrous weekend, and really, since the first couple races, have had a disastrous season since then. Alonso's steering wheel fell off in practice yesterday, and the wheels are literally falling off that car. They were slower in practice 2 yesterday by a few tenths of a second compared to FP2 in 2023, where of course they had one of the best cars on the grid. That just shows you how much it changes Formula 1 in 2 years. You can go from literally, the podium and close to the front to basically at the back. So we will see who ends up on pole here soon enough. But again, the first job is to see who the bottom 5 will be. By the way, thank you guys so much for getting us to 100, just over 100 likes. Let's try and now get up to, say, 150 plus likes if we can. So let's try and get that in the next, by the end of Q1, let's say. Let's get up to 150 plus likes, if that is indeed possible. But yeah, a few drivers out on track just doing their out laps. Obviously not going very quickly on their out laps. They're trying to protect these tyres, as they do overheat quite a bit here in Bahrain. And that is, of course, a concern. But Lance Stroll and now Nico Hülkenberg have started their first runs in qualifying. Hülkenberg's never really had that many great results in qualifying in Bahrain. He's had some great races here, but qualifying has not been always that kind. As Fernando Alonso starts a flying lap. Alonso, of course, this track has been kind to him. He's won this race 3 times, was on the podium here 2 years ago. And 20 years ago, at this very Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso started on pole position for Renault, alongside Jarno Trulli, who was racing for Toyota that season. But yeah, that is how old Fernando is. As Hülkenberg going through turn 11. Sauber not looking that great, to be honest. The quickest time, by the way, in practice 2 was a 1:30.5. Pole position today should be I would say a 29.3 or a 29.4, something like that. That's what I think pole position should be. So if anyone can get into the 129s in this session, that would be a super impressive amount of pace. As Lance Stroll does the first lap time, but is immediately beaten by Hülkenberg, who goes 3/4 of a second quicker. Here comes Alonso, who goes even quicker. Lance Stroll's lap time has been deleted for a track limit violation. Alonso a 1:32.3. He'll have to do a lot better than that if he wants to get into Q2. That is quite slow, I must say. And yeah, Stroll's time deleted for a track limit violation at turn 13, which is the penultimate corner before that short straight heading into the final corner. As we're now looking at the 2 Ferraris on the F1 broadcast, who are just slowly trundling out of the pit lane. And now we look at car number 1, Max Verstappen, who has won this Grand Prix the last 2 years in dominant style and is looking to win it this weekend as well. And honestly, I don't think it's totally impossible, but it all comes down really to qualifying. If he can get at least onto the front row, it's possible. But if he's third on the grid, then it'd be very, very unlikely. But let's see what Max can do for his first timed run. Looking all good through turn 1 and 2. And 3, DRS wide open. Car just a bit ahead of him through turn 4, but should get out of the way. And it does. It's Hamilton, I think, in the Ferrari. And Verstappen does a first sector, which is not that quick. But the first sector is important to a degree, but it's really about the middle sector. The middle sector easily the most important part of the lap. But handling wise, the Red Bull looks absolutely fine. No obvious issues. As Verstappen through turn 11. Looking absolutely fine. And only slightly quicker than Alonso after the first two sectors. So this is not a quick lap at all from Verstappen, as Tsunoda actually is going quicker than Max on this lap so far, as Max locks his inside front into the final corner and goes slightly off the track and now comes back into the pits. But yes, Tsunoda was actually going quicker after the first two sectors than Max was, as Tsunoda might have exceeded track limits at the very end there, I'm not sure. Tsunoda goes quickest to 1:32.0. Still not that quick though from Tsunoda. Would have expected lap times easily in the 1:31s by now, but yeah, that is not very quick. I know the tyres are a bit harder here than I think they were last year, but I'm not sure if that's entirely why these lap times are not that impressive, as Jack Doohan now goes quickest, quicker than Gasly, his teammate, and Tsunoda. So a good first run, at least compared to his teammate. As yeah, Max locking the inside front and going deep. Just a replay of that. So yeah, Doohan is at a 1:31.9. Which still, I don't think is going to be good enough to get him through to Q2. So these lap times are pretty slow to start with. Sainz goes up to third. Lawson is sixth. Hadjar is in eighth place. Oliver Behrman is in seventh. And then, yeah, Hadjar eighth. And then Hulkenberg in ninth. Ferrari's looking pretty quick on this lap. Well, Leclerc was. Not sure about Lewis Hamilton there, who goes second behind Doohan, which is clear evidence that these lap times are pretty slow. And Tsunoda has had his time deleted for the violation at the final corner, which I was expecting. So Tsunoda now back down into P10 at least, or even further now. Charles Leclerc does a 1:31.4, which is a lot more like it. Still not the greatest time for him in that car. Should be really in the 1:30s, but a lot better than the other times. And there is Oscar Piastri now going quickest at a 1:31.3. So Piastri quickest. Lando Norris goes even quicker, 1:31.1. 0.3 of a second almost quicker than his teammate. So McLaren 1-2 at the minute. And then Leclerc third, and then Doohan, Hamilton, Sainz, Gasly, Alonso, Lawson, and Albon is in P10. As here comes Antonelli, who goes fourth quickest. And his teammate, George Russell, goes sixth, slower than Antonelli. Meanwhile, Alonso does yet another lap and goes fifth. As Russell, is now in seventh position. So it is with 7.5 minutes to go in Q1. It's Norris leading from Piastri, Leclerc, Antonelli, Alonso, Doohan, Russell, Hamilton, Sainz, Gasly, Lawson, Albon, Behrman, Stroll, and then Hadjar 15th. And then in the drop zone, you've got Bortoletto, Hulkenberg, and then the two Red Bulls with Verstappen and Tsunoda, and Ocon. But those three, Verstappen, Ocon, and Tsunoda, have not done a official legal lap time, as Ocon is about to complete a first lap time. Hulkenberg in the drop zone is on a much quicker lap. And Ocon to the line. Goes ninth. With I think a 1:32.1 or 132.0, something like that. Which is, I'm not sure if that is really going to be good enough. As Nico Hulkenberg goes just behind him in 10th place. So I still think Ocon and Hulkenberg are going to be at risk with those lap times. Obviously, they are still going to do another run on fresh tyres, probably, to get themselves into the top 15. But at the minute, it's Stroll, Hadjar, Bortoleto, and the 2 Red Bulls who have not done an official legal time. But once they do, it should obviously be easily good enough, really, with both cars to get them into Q2. As we're looking on the F1 broadcast at Carlos Sainz, who is currently in 11th place, 3/10 of a second quicker than his teammate. Pretty good from Carlos so far. But at the top, Norris on a 1:31.1. I would expect that lap time, the best lap time I've seen so far, to improve to around a mid 1 minute 30. So the Red Bull, they need to aim for either a late 1 minute 30 or an early 1 minute 31 to do good times here in Q1. As we're looking here at, I think, was that Jack Doohan, who's done a decent lap so far, up in 6th place. Meanwhile, Gasly's down in P12. This is exactly the type of weekend that Doohan needs. As long as he keeps it up, of course. As there is Ayumu Iwasa, who drove the Red Bull yesterday. Max Verstappen's Red Bull. As we're looking at a Mercedes, I think, possibly. Oh no, might be an Aston Martin. Just slowly coming out onto the track. Yeah, it is an Aston Martin. Oh no, it's the Williams of Carlos Sainz, who finished on the podium here last year. Finished on the podium last year in Suzuka, but this year at Suzuka he ended up only 15th. Has had a poor start to his Williams career. Albon has wiped the floor with Carlos. As Behrman, we're looking at now. Looking at his visor cam. And him just coming through the final corner for what is probably going to be his final run in Q1. He's 15th. He really should be getting through to Q2. Let's see if he delivers a good lap here. And Behrman looking good through turn 1, 2, and 3. I think a 1:31.5 should be good enough to get through to Q2. Or maybe at the slowest, a 31.6. But if you're doing a late 1 minute 31, I think you're still going to be a bit at risk. As Bortoleto has done a better first sector than Behrman, but slower than his personal best. Stroll done a very good first sector compared to Behrman. As here comes Ollie through turn 11. Keeps the car just about intact. And Behrman, second down after the first two sectors. This is not a good enough lap. And I'm not sure this lap, if this is the best lap he's going to do, not sure it's going to be good enough to get him into Q2, I'm afraid. As Behrman has a bit of a wiggle coming out the final corner. And only goes 13th. And yeah, I'd be surprised if that got him through to Q2. So Behrman is in big trouble. Here comes Bortoleto. He goes up to 12th, but I think he's in probably a bit of trouble as well. I'm not sure that lap time is necessarily good enough. Here comes Lance Stroll. Only 14th. He's definitely in trouble with that time. Is Isaac Hadjar. Up to P5. That's a lot more like it from Isaac. That's the type of pace he's been showing this weekend. As Carlos Sainz goes up to 6th. And here is Max Verstappen, who's got to get this lap right and hope there's no yellow or red flags, because if there is, he'll be out in Q1. As Pierre Gasly is up to 5th. So he is all sorted. Doohan up to 3rd. Great lap. As Behrman is in the drop zone now, by the way. So Behrman is definitely out. Disappointing qualifying from him. Lawson goes 14th. Not sure. No, I don't think that's going to be enough for Lawson. As Verstappen through turn 11. Car looks okay. As Lewis Hamilton goes up to 2nd. And yeah, Verstappen miles up on Bortoleto's time. So Verstappen definitely is on his way to Q2. This lap might put him in the top 3. There's a good final sector. Tsunoda also clearly good enough to get himself out of the drop zone. What about Alex Albon? We'll see in a moment. Here is Max Verstappen, who does go up to 3rd and easily into Q2. Here is his teammate Tsunoda, who only goes 11th, but that will definitely be good enough to get him through. And now we wait for Alex Albon, who's currently last. Surely he can get through. And yes, he does. Just about by less than 0.03 of a second. Alex Albon is through up to 14th as Ocon goes up to 12th. And that pushes Albon into the drop zone. Alex Albon is out of qualifying in 16th place. And that was all because Ocon did that final lap and just pushed Albon out. Brilliant final lap there from Ocon. But what of a surprise there to see Albon knocked out in Q1 after the season he's had in such a good car. And Behrman also out in last place. Really disappointing session from him. Anyway, that's Q1 over and done with. Let's go through your drivers who are on their way to Q2. Lando Norris, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Oscar Piastri, Jack Doohan, Charles Leclerc, Kimi Antonelli, Pierre Gasly, Isaac Hadjar, Carlos Sainz, Yuki Tsunoda, Esteban Ocon, Fernando Alonso, George Russell, Nico Hulkenberg, and knocked out in Q1, Alex Albon, Liam Lawson, Gabriel Bortoleto, Lance Stroll, and Oliver Behrman. And Q2 will be underway in probably about 3 or 4 minutes' time. But yeah, Albon knocked out is a surprise because Williams have been pretty much just about top 10 runners for not just this weekend, but the season really as a whole. So yeah, that is a disappointing session for Alexander Albon. And yeah, Rook's saying half a second off the time Carlos Sainz did. Sainz ended up 10th. So that was the clear potential of what he should have been doing. But he failed to deliver. But great job, I have to say, by doing so far to be ahead of Gasly. Good job, really good job by Hülkenberg and Alonso to get their cars into Q2, especially when those two cars are still the two slowest cars on the grid. And a decent job as well from Ocon to get into Q2, even though really he should have done, but at least ahead of his teammate Behrman, who's really outshone him since Ocon's amazing result in China of 5th place. So, yeah. But still, a slight surprise of Albon being knocked out in the Williams. There is easily the potential for more surprises. And we will wait to see once this session, a Q2 session, gets underway, just what surprises we could get in Q2. In regards to the front runners, McLaren, Red Bull, Ferrari, Mercedes, Mercedes weren't too great with their laps, I have to say, but they all did okay. And obviously made their way through, which is all that matters, really. They don't have to show what they've really got until Q3. So, yeah. But yeah, we await the beginning of this second part of qualifying. In Q2, Alonso and Hülkenberg, you would imagine, will be eliminated because I just don't think their cars are quick enough to get them into Q3. Ocon as well, I would imagine will get knocked out. And then in terms of who gets in the top 10 out of the more so midfield pack, it's between Tsunoda, Sainz, Hadjar, and obviously the two Alpines. I think one of the Alpines definitely gets knocked out. And so far, you'd have to say probably looks like that should be Pierre Gasly. So, yeah. If I was to predict, I'd say, yeah, Gasly, Ocon, Alonso, and Hülkenberg most likely will be eliminated. And then it's between Doohan, Tsunoda, Sainz, and Hadjar as to who gets through to the top 10. And then obviously, the two Ferraris, two Mercedes, two McLarens, and Verstappen should all be fine. And they're just showing with Oliver Behrman's lap where it all went wrong, and he understeered and locked up slightly going into the hairpin of turn 8, which really hurt his lap. Would have lost him probably two, maybe even 0.3 of a second through that corner. And if he had not made that mistake, he would have made it through probably to Q2, or at least would have been a bit higher up than last on the grid. But yeah, we await the restarting of this session, which is about to happen and actually has just happened. Q2 is now underway. As we're looking at Lando Norris in the garage. Just handing off a drinks bottle. Looks like he's about to get out there. And yeah, the quickest time of that session, a 1:31.1, which I still think is pretty slow compared to what I think pole position will be, which should be in the 1:29s. I still think a mid 1:29 is what will be the pole position time, something around that, maybe just under a mid 1:29. So the front runners have not shown their true hand as of yet, but there is still plenty of time for them to show it, as pretty much all the cars now come out to track at the same time. as they all slowly filter onto the track. I've just forgot to sync the timer up. Sorry about that. Was daydreaming. So I'll sync it up at the 13-minute mark, which is in about 20 seconds from now. But yeah, the car's just slowly touring around on their outlaps, just trying to make sure they don't take anything out of the tyres. And there you go. 13 minutes remain in Q2. And I've also just forgot as well. You can clearly see I'm on the ball. There you go. There's the second cut-off zone. So at the minute, it's Tsunoda, Ocon, Alonso, Russell, Hulkenberg. Obviously, that's the positions from Q1. If it was to finish that way, though, at the end of Q2, then obviously those would be the drivers out in those positions. As we're looking at Charles Leclerc, who took his first ever pole position at this track in Bahrain 6 years ago. It is amazing that 2019 was 6 years ago, but that is the facts. And he should have had the race win that weekend. It was a truly brilliant weekend from Leclerc, and he deserved the win, but his engine took it from him and was lucky in the end to finish in third because of a late safety car. As we're now looking at Yuki Tsunoda in the Red Bull. If Tsunoda can make it into the top 10, I think he'll be pretty satisfied with that in that car, which is still proving to be pretty difficult to drive. Tsunoda, not sure he had a great turn 4 there, especially in the middle of the corner. Was looking for the grip. That's Tsunoda into the hairpin. Not quite hitting the apex, but was good enough, I guess. As he comes through into turn 10. As big crash, and that's going to be a red flag. It's Ocon. He's spun on the exit of turn 3. And yeah, red flag with 11 minutes and 1 second remaining on the clock. And he's done what Max Verstappen did in 2018, I think it was. He spun on the exit of turn 3. He's maybe gone a bit too wide or just lit the tyres up too much, and he's gone left into the wall and smashed into the barrier. He says he's okay, which is all good. And yeah, he is. He's just trying to get out of the car. But yeah, that's a big hit. And that's obviously Ocon out of this session. And we'll see a replay, I'm sure, in a moment. But shouldn't take too long to clear away the debris because it's not a massive amount, but probably be a few minutes. And here is a replay. So yeah, into turn 1, all good. Then into turn 2, yeah, lost the rear end and failed to control it, and then went in rear wing first. Wasn't actually that big of a crash. It looks a lot worse from the debris that's fallen off the car than it actually is. But yeah, he spun. He lost the rear end and he failed to correct it. He just kept his foot a bit too much on the gas, and that's what spun the car around. And he is out of qualifying. Disaster for the Haas team today, especially around a track where they've been so regularly good. Many great results here for that team. Obviously, in the Grand Prix, they were fifth in 2022 with Kevin Magnussen, who made his really triumphant return that weekend. As Russell, we're just seeing, and one of the McLarens getting wheeled back into the garage. But yeah, wasn't as big of a crash as we maybe expected from the what we saw of the debris replay showing us that yeah, it wasn't as bad. But yeah, Ocon will obviously be starting the race if he doesn't have to take a gearbox penalty or anything. Uh, should be starting the race from 15th on the grid. As Rook saying, Sonoda just wasted a new set of softs. To be honest, I mean, there's still plenty of time left in the session, so he can still go out there and do that lap on that tyre, and it should be fine. It's not like he has to discard that tyre. So I don't think, and I know you said what was it, Antonelli and a couple others, uh, were on used tyres. I think they'll probably go out still on used tyres because I don't think this crash at this point of the session really changes anything because there's still 11 minutes to go. Plenty of time to do 2 runs at least. As Sky F1 are doing a interview with Alex Albon, who, yeah, first bad result of the season. 16th on the grid, sadly. But I'm sure Albon can make progress from there because that car is a lot quicker than that. So, yeah. As is another replay. And yeah, turn 1 went perfectly for Ocon. Literally did exactly what you want to do. And then just had a small correction on the exit of turn 2. And instead of just laying off the gas enough so that it corrected the snap of oversteer, he tried to keep his foot down, but yeah, the car couldn't handle it. And Ocon is out. But yeah, session should be back underway in a few minutes. As we're looking at Leclerc in the Ferrari pits, who has had pole position, yeah, twice before here in Bahrain. This is one of his favourite tracks on the calendar. And estimated time of Q2 resumption, 19:37 local time, which for us is in, yeah, a couple minutes' time. And once we're underway, I will sync up the timer at the 10-minute mark. So don't worry. I will get everything synced back up for you guys. And yeah, track is now clear. So we will be back underway in about 90 seconds' time. As Hulkenberg is already getting to the end of the pit lane. And Hulkenberg said on the radio that he almost had a moment like that, and he did, but he probably let off the throttle enough that it allowed the correction to happen without incident. And yeah, every car now remaining in this session parked at the end of the pit lane, all desperate to get back out there and get a lap time on the board. And in the middle of the pack, we're seeing Max Verstappen just ahead of Lewis Hamilton. And obviously Hamilton released with his teammate Leclerc. as the red light will turn green momentarily, and we can get this session back underway. As there is on the TV broadcast, team principal Fred Vasseur, who's under a bit of pressure, obviously, at the minute. And the red light should go green any moment now. There you go. We are back underway for Q2, and hopefully no more incident in this qualifying session. It is rare to have an incident in qualifying here in Bahrain because a lot of the barriers are quite far away, and obviously the track is always dry. So, yeah. As Sonoda still in the pits. So they're going to wait a bit longer. And no tyres on his car either. So trying possibly a different strategy there at Red Bull. Who knows? As the cars still continue to slowly filter onto track. And there you go. 10 minutes remain here in qualifying 2. With still the main event of Q3 to come. As we're now looking on board at Isaac Hadjar, who really should be making it into Q3 for the 3rd race running. And can he qualify 7th for the 3rd race running? Really, I honestly so impressed with what he did at Suzuka. Again, a track that really does show or separate the good drivers from the not so good. Or the less good, if you want to put it that way. And Hadjar, I know his car was quick, but he really impressed me with just how good he was. And he is, in that midfield, he really is the man on form in what is a very good Racing Bulls car. Here's another impressive youngster, Kimi Antonelli, who had, I thought, a pretty good Japanese Grand Prix weekend that went a bit overlooked. Had a really good final stint of the race. He's looking for a decent qualifying result this evening, as he's on his first Q2 run. And a decent first sector for Antonelli. Not as good as his teammate, though, who's gone about half a tenth quicker. As Antonelli and Russell have been noted for leaving the garage before resumption time announced. I don't think that'll be a grid penalty, but that could be a bit of a fine there for Mercedes. But I don't see a grid penalty happening for that, as Antonelli has completed the first 2 sectors now. And has actually done a quicker middle sector than his teammate. So, decent lap so far for Antonelli. Let's see what the lap time is as he opens the DRS. And it's a 1:31.1, pretty much the quickest time we saw in Q1. George Russell behind does a 1:31.4. Really lost quite a bit of time in the final part of the lap. As Hadjar a second and a half down on Antonelli after the first 2 sectors. Poor lap for Hadjar, who is, slowing down and coming back into the pits because clearly he's done a poor lap there. Mercedes, though, definitely can go a lot quicker than what they just went. Sainz has just gone up to second. Gasly up to fourth. Hulkenberg up to P5 as here comes Lando Norris, who does a 1:30.5. That is a lot more like it. And meanwhile, Oscar Piastri has done a purple first and second sector. Can he go to the top? Yes, he can by a tenth of a second, a 1:30.4. Oscar Piastri leads the timesheets, and McLaren, first team really to show proper pace. As here comes Leclerc, who has a good final corner, but it's not going to be anywhere near the front two. He does a purple final sector, Leclerc, but Leclerc only third on a 1:31.0 as Doohan goes sixth ahead of Russell, Gasly, and Hulkenberg. So a good run there for Doohan. 10th and a half quicker than his teammate. So still doing well is Doohan. But yeah, McLaren, good times there. Really good times. But we're yet to see the two Red Bulls and the Ferrari of Hamilton, what they can do. As it appears Red Bull are only going to go for one run in, well, at least with Verstappen, it looks like they're probably only going to go for one run. Which, again, is a bit risky. Here's Isaac Hadjar. Looks like he's about to be released from the pits. And, yep, he now comes out. And here's a replay of one of the moments that really hurt his lap. Locked up at turn 10 and went off, which costs you at least half a second, if not even more than that. So, yeah, Hadjar can obviously do a lot better. As the two McLarens come in. And, well, we'll see if they go out again. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't go out again, given how far ahead of they are of the others. And I think they probably could get away with keeping both cars in the pits now for the rest of Q2. Leclerc will definitely have to go out again. But yeah, McLaren, I think they could probably get away with keeping their cars in the pits now. Hulkenberg obviously does not have that same comfort as he comes back out on fresh, soft tyres. Here is Russell, who did a poor first run. Probably, I would imagine, was on used tyres. And Rooks did say earlier Antonelli and Russell were on used tyres. And I'm imagining they probably were still on used tyres after that crash that Ocon had. So that would make sense for why Antonelli and Russell are so far off. But still decent pace, though, from Antonelli on used tyres compared to McLaren, who were probably on new soft tyres. Not the end of the world. Let's see what this time is like from Russell on new soft tyres. Through turn 4. Pretty good grip through there. And only about a tenth off Piastri for the first sector. And very good front end on that Mercedes through turn 8. Now into turn 9 and 10. This is another good place to test the front end. And again, passing the test with flying colours. As Hamilton has done his first sector. Not as good as Russell, but still good enough. Hamilton really should get through, you'd think, to Q3. As Russell now comes up to the middle sector. How is he doing compared to the McLarens? 0.3 off. Which is not bad, but maybe not as good as he was hoping for. As Antonelli goes third, only a quarter of a second slower than Piastri. That's a good lap from Antonelli. Here comes Russell. He goes third with a purple final sector. Very good final sector. And yeah, Mercedes only 2 to 2.5 tenths off in the end. And if that was McLaren's, best pace, then yeah, that's really good. As Tsunoda goes up to 6th. That is a good lap. And that could very well get Tsunoda into Q3. Lewis Hamilton goes 5th. As here is, as Pierre Gasly's just done a purple middle sector. Isaac Hadjar goes 8th. Not sure if that's going to be good enough. We'll have to see. He might just get away with it. As here comes Pierre Gasly, who goes up to 3rd. What a lap by Gasly. Up to 3rd, just ahead of Russell and the Mercedes. Here is Max Verstappen, only 7th. Not a good run at all for Max. As here is Alonso. We've still got Sainz and Hulkenberg on final runs as the checkered flag is about to fall. Here is Alonso. Only 14th. Absolutely shocking pace from that car. Nothing Alonso can do. Here is Carlos Sainz. Can he put Williams in the top 10? Yes, he can. 6th. He goes, and Hadjar is out in Q2. What a surprise. After Racing Bulls looks so good. As here comes Nico Hulkenberg. Stays 13th. To be honest, that's a good effort, 13th on the grid in that car. So I think he'll be happy with that. Here comes Doohan. Only 11th. Misses out by just over 100th of a second. Here is Leclerc, who is 9th. Where does he go? Goes up to 6th. Not a great final sector, but he is in to the top 10 shootout. That is Q2, guys. Let's go through your drivers who've made it through to the top 10 shootout. Oscar Piastri, Lando Norris, Pierre Gasly. What a lap from the Frenchman in a car that really shouldn't be in the top 10, but he is somehow, with an incredible lap, 6 tenths quicker than Doohan, has put himself in the top 10. What a lap from Gasly. One of the laps of the day, without doubt. Russell 4th. And then you've got Antonelli, Leclerc, Sainz and the Williams. Great job by him. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen and Yuki Tsunoda, the first Red Bull driver not named Max Verstappen to make Q3 in 2025. Well done to him. Getting on top of that Red Bull. Knocked out in Q2 though, Jack Doohan, Isaac Hadjar, Nico Hulkenberg, Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. But Q3 we're underway in about 5 minutes from now. And yeah, Gasly, what a lap that is. Like I said, one of the laps of the day. And showing some of the form of last year. Which is why he's still one of the top midfield performers. Astro saying still 11th for Doohan is pretty good. If you had asked me before qualifying whether Doohan, whether 11th would be good enough for Doohan, I'd say absolutely. But Gasly getting ahead of him still will be a bit disappointing. But yeah, that's still a good result. And there is definitely a chance of points tomorrow. No doubt about it, there is a chance of points tomorrow. That Alpine car, if you look at the races so far, it's been a bit quicker on race day compared to qualifying. So, yeah, it's definitely a possibility. They just need to produce it, really. But just looking to see online if there's any breaking news I can bring you regarding what's happened so far. And no, can't see. Can't see anything. And yeah, as Astro just said, 145 likes. Thanks for that, guys. Let's try and get over 150 likes by the end of qualifying. That'd be great if we could do that. And thanks to everyone who has tuned in today. But of course, we still have got the final bit of qualifying to come. As the two Mercedes cars will be investigated after the session for failing to follow race director's instructions, leaving the garage before resumption time announced. So yeah, but I don't think that's going to be a grid penalty. I think that'd be very harsh. As Goat Farmer says, love you, Chaz. Cheers for that. But going into Q3, it still very much looks like McLaren for pole, if not the front row. Verstappen didn't really show any pace in that final lap in Q2, but I still think there might be a twist to this tale. McLaren, again, they should get pole, but I don't think it's necessarily going to be as easy as it might seem. But we will see what happens. But just going to check and see if there's any more news I could possibly bring you guys. But I don't think I can see. Don't think I can see anything at the moment. As Sky F1 are just doing, they're just showing replays of why Max Verstappen's lap in Q2 wasn't very good, but it doesn't really matter now because we're now into Q3. As Q3 about to get underway. And it looks like we could have a new man on pole here in Bahrain. Piastri and Norris both have never started on pole in Bahrain in Formula One. Neither has George Russell or Kimi Antonelli. The only drivers in the top 10 who have started on pole here at Bahrain before are Leclerc, Hamilton, and Verstappen. So, could be a new man or even a completely new front row compared to what we're used to at this track. As Fernando Alonso is walking his way back to the pits. And it says Alonso 13th, but I'm pretty sure Alonso... Oh no, he did... it says 13th on the timing screen, and Hulkenberg down in 15th. That might be because Hulkenberg's had his time deleted for a track limit violation somewhere, so I'll just change that around. But here we go. The two Red Bulls are going to be the first out there on the track. Tsunoda first, ahead of Verstappen. As Andrew Hemingway says, I hope Norris gets pole. Well, he's got the car to do it, so there's no doubt whether he can do it. It's all down to him to nail the lap. And if he does, then congratulations, he'll be on pole position. And if Max does have a poor qualifying here, then this is a massive opportunity for both Norris and Piastri, mostly Norris, to deliver a big lap. As there you go, Q3 has started, and I'll sync up the timer in about 45 seconds. That's the two Red Bulls, first two on track. Then it is Antonelli ahead of Sainz. Good job by Sainz. He's out-qualified Albon. He's into the top 10 and hopefully can get a decent result. I mean, with Hadjar out, Sainz could end up 8th or 9th on the grid, which I think would be a pretty good result. Let's just wait a few more seconds and then I'll get the timer synced up. It's two McLarens, by the way, still in the garage, so they're going to go a bit later. And there you go. 11 minutes remaining qualifying. Who will take pole position? One thing I am going to do is finish up the poll in the chat that's been running for a few hours now. And we have had many votes in this poll. Just over 2,000 people have cast their vote. And I'll just wait for the results to appear in the chat. So we're just looking at Antonelli, who's looking quick in the Mercedes and might be able to, for the first time, out-qualify his teammate, but it's going to be close. But yeah, poll still hasn't appeared in the chat, probably because there's been that many votes. It's lagging a bit, but it will appear eventually. There you go. 2,200 votes on who will take pole position for the Bahrain Grand Prix, and 31% of you have gone for Oscar Piastri, 27% for Verstappen, 26% for Norris, and 13% for Leclerc. Thank you guys so much for voting in that poll. Let's find out if Piastri will get pole, or will it be Verstappen or Norris, or even a surprise. Sonoda does a not great first sector, I must say. 29.2. Which is, yeah, not great. But it is quicker than what Max has done in the first sector. So, not a great start for Verstappen. Sonoda feels like he's getting better all the time in this qualifying session. As it comes through turn 11. And car looks all good through there. As Gasly sets the first lap time. No idea what it is. But Sonoda has done a purple first and second sector. Max still slower than Sonoda. Poor lap to start Q3 from Verstappen. As here comes Sonoda out of the final corner. And Yuki Tsunoda goes quickest on a 1:31.6, which is pretty slow. That's 1.2 seconds slower than McLaren were in Q2. And Max goes 0.4 slower than Tsunoda. Awful lap from Max. But Antonelli isn't going any quicker out there. Russell, though, has done a purple first sector. Almost feels like these cars are getting slower as the session goes on. As Antonelli does go ahead of the two Red Bulls by 1/10.5, but still, a 1:31.4 is not very quick. Carlos Sainz goes third. He splits the two Red Bull cars. As Verstappen saying on the radio, his brakes are terrible. I can't brake at all. So bad. Here comes George Russell. A 1:30.3, over 1 second quicker than Antonelli. And for the moment on provisional pole, Pierre Gasly does another run and goes 4th. Here is Lewis Hamilton. What can he do? Only 2nd, but 1 second behind Russell. Where is the pace out there? The Red Bulls, Antonelli, they've got no pace all of a sudden. As Leclerc coming to the line, Norris has done a slightly slower middle sector compared to Russell as Leclerc goes 2nd, but also a 2nd slower than George Russell. As here comes Oscar Piastri, who goes to provisional pole by a 10.5. Meanwhile, Lando Norris goes 3rd, just behind Russell. So it's Piastri on pole for now, with Russell 2nd and Norris 3rd. Only a 10.5 separating the top 3. And then Leclerc 4th over a 2nd off pole. I have no idea what Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen and Antonelli are doing outside of the top 3. They are on a different racetrack. As Max had a big oversteer moment at turn 4 and according to AWS lost 0.4 of a second. But that's not explaining why they had no pace. But what a lap from Russell to put himself at the moment on the front row of the grid. That's a perfect spot for Russell to be. That's a replay of Antonelli locking up into turn 1. But despite some of the real shocking pace, Max Verstappen in 10th, 1.8 seconds away from pole. Yeah, just speechless there. I'm sorry. I just couldn't believe how bad that that first lap was for Max. Really couldn't believe. But for Tsunoda, as Antonelli has had track limit lap time deleted for track limits. Not sure if that's going to affect his position. If it does, I'll let you know. And obviously alter the order. But Tsunoda, even though his lap time very slow compared to the people on pole and that, yes, Tsunoda ahead of the 2 midfield runners of Gasly and Sainz. So Tsunoda is currently doing really, I think, as expected. So yes, Tsunoda doing a very good job. But surely everyone from, as Antonelli has been relegated down to 10th. So Tsunoda is now 6th with Gasly 7th, Sainz 8th, Verstappen 9th, Antonelli 10th. Surely everyone from Leclerc down can improve, as Lewis Hamilton has had his time deleted as well. So Tsunoda now up to 5th. Imagine if Tsunoda starts 5th after what happened last week. As one of the McLarens has just, both McLarens have been released, and so has Max Verstappen. And, well, Yuki Tsunoda is already on an outlap. But surely it's only between the top 3. Leclerc, Hamilton, Verstappen, and Antonelli, I'm sure, can improve a lot on this final run to, be a lot closer to the top 3. But surely the fight for pole is between Piastri, Russell, and Norris. Will McLaren take their first ever pole in Bahrain, or will Mercedes take their first pole of the season, which could be crucial in this Drivers' Championship battle? As there's Will Joseph, Lando Norris's race engineer, in the garage. And we're now looking at Lewis Hamilton, who's now got a lot of pressure on him. He's P10 after his time was deleted for a track limit violation. He's going to have to deliver a really good final lap, and the deletion was at the exit of the penultimate corner. And yeah, pretty clear. He went over the white line, which is obviously not allowed. But it was a pretty rubbish lap anyway, so I'm not sure he'd really be bothered to keep it. But it does add pressure to him to really deliver a good lap. As we're now looking at Antonelli, who is just slowly touring around, preparing his tyres. If his teammate Russell can get second on the grid, then really Antonelli has got to be aiming for fourth to put himself in that fight for the race. And let's see what the young Italian can do. As into turn 1 he goes. And the car looking absolutely fine through there. And he's got the wobbly, more, I think, realistic, they call it, onboard camera. Which makes things look a bit more dramatic behind the wheel than it actually is. As Antonelli does a good first sector, half a tenth quicker than Piastri. And he hits the apex nicely. That Mercedes has got a really good front end as Russell does a brilliant first sector, a tenth and a half up on Piastri. And a purple first sector as well. That is a super start to the lap for George Russell. Can Mr. Saturday deliver pole like he sometimes does? As here comes Antonelli for the middle sector. What's his middle sector time looking like? It's half a tenth up on Piastri. This could put Antonelli right in the fight for pole as Tsunoda goes fourth, but it's still a second off pole. Not sure he's going to remain in that good of a position with a lap time like that. Russell does a purple middle sector. He's 2 tenths up on Piastri. Here comes Antonelli, who goes to pole position by a couple hundredths of a second, but I'm not sure he's going to stay there. Because here comes his teammate, George Russell, goes to pole, a 1:30.0. Will he keep it? It's currently a Mercedes front row. Lewis Hamilton, only 5th. Leclerc goes to 2nd. Good lap from Leclerc, and at the minute on the front row, will it stay that way? Lando Norris has not had a good first sector. Pierre Gasly goes 4th. Out-qualifying Tsunoda. Here comes Max Verstappen. What can he do as Piastri does a purple middle sector, a tenth and a bit up on Russell? Verstappen to the line. Only 7th. What a disaster for the world champion. He's only 7th on the grid. As Lando, not a great middle sector, but here comes Oscar Piastri. Can he take pole away? Yes, he can. A tenth and a half. He takes it. Will Lando Norris go on the front row? No! He bottles the final lap. And Lando Norris is 6th on the grid. Behind Gasly in the Alpine. Incredible as Sainz goes 8th. And Lando Norris has absolutely thrown away at least a front row here. And a disaster for Lando. But it is his first pole in Bahrain and McLaren's first pole in Bahrain for Oscar Piastri. What a lap, a 1:29.8. He is on pole position for your Bahrain Grand Prix. George Russell 2nd, what a lap. And what a driver George Russell is. He is without doubt a championship contender. Leclerc 3rd, what a lap by Leclerc. Antonelli 4th. Pierre Gasly 5th. Out-qualifying both 1st and 2nd in the championship in an Alpine. I actually cannot believe what I'm saying. Gasly is 5th off the grid. Norris 6th. Awful, awful qualifying. And that right there is why we have our doubts about him. Max Verstappen 7th. Awful qualifying, but not as bad as Lando's. Sainz 8th. Decent qualifying. Lewis Hamilton 9th. Absolute shocker for Hamilton. And Yuki Tsunoda P10. It's not good enough lap in the end for him, but wow. What a grid we have got. Look at that top 10. If that doesn't get you excited for tomorrow, I don't know what will. We have got a lot of overtaking that's going to be happening tomorrow. And quite possibly a fight through the field for the race win and for definitely the podium. What a grid we have got. Anyway, now that qualifying is over, let me just ask you guys quickly, whilst a lot of you are still here, who is your driver of the day for qualifying in Bahrain? For me, it's only one man who is driver of the day, and that is Pierre Gasly. But let me put these options in here. Oscar Piastri will be in there, George Russell, Pierre Gasly, and I'll put I'm going to put Carlos Sainz in there as well, because 8th on the grid is still pretty good for him. But for me, clearly, Gasly, driver of the day. Not only 5th on the grid, but he was only... Let me look at his lap time. He was less than 4/10 from pole. 0.375 was the gap he was away from pole position. That is just incredible. Just like his lap in Q2. Incredible lap. And he was only 0.03 of a second behind Antonelli. He was so close to 4th on the grid. And was within 1/10 of Leclerc. He could have been 3rd on the grid. Gasly legit could have been in the top 3. If he had just found another 0.5, he would have been 3rd on the grid in an Alpine. That is, remember, Alpine are last in the championship. They haven't scored a point this season. They'll definitely be scoring points tomorrow, you'd imagine. Wow. Do we have some grid for tomorrow's race? And even if Piastri does, I won't say dominate tomorrow. I don't think he'll dominate. But if he does win relatively comfortably, the rest of the pack is going to be very close. No doubt about it. And if you're looking at Mercedes, you got to say, even though Antonelli maybe could have got 3rd, given how close he was to Leclerc, Mercedes are in a really good position to get a double podium tomorrow, which would be great for their championship. And, well, not just on the drivers, but on the constructor side as well. So, yeah, what a grid we have got for tomorrow. Cannot wait for this Bahrain Grand Prix. It will definitely be quite a bit more exciting than last week at Suzuka. I can guarantee that. Whether it will be a classic, we'll have to find out, but it will be better than last week in Japan. I have no doubt in my mind about that. But also credit to Leclerc, delivered when it mattered. Ferrari still, though, not quick enough to be on pole, which is not a surprise. And Leclerc is going to have to do some job tomorrow to finish on the podium. Astro saying Piastri has the pace, absolutely. As long as Piastri maintains the lead on the first lap, really, Oscar should win the race tomorrow by a decent amount. I'm not saying he's going to win the race by half a minute. It's not going to be like that, but he should win it relatively comfortably, as long as he maintains the lead on that first lap. And then 2nd and 3rd, you'd probably, again, you'd favour Mercedes with where they are on the grid. And they're quicker than Ferrari. We can clearly see that. And we know they have a better race pace than Ferrari do. So, yeah. That's what should, you could say, happen tomorrow. But McLaren should have locked out the front row probably today, but they haven't. They're 1st and 6th. Red Bull 7th and 10th. So yeah, just incredible. Absolutely incredible what we have just seen in qualifying. Looney Classic says, let's face it, guys, Lewis is finished. Absolutely. Mercedes is cooking up. Absolutely, they are. As we've said, that car, it's a good car. It just needs a big upgrade to push them forward, and they will be winning races this year. I've no doubt about that. Especially with George Russell at the wheel. What a driver. And he is, without doubt, I think Russell is the dark horse for the championship. Verstappen, I would still say, is the favourite, because once Red Bull improve, Max should be regularly winning, or, winning enough to win the championship. But do not count out Russell, because that car is good, and he is easily one of the best on the grid. Yanni says, Gasly driver of the day, but Russell and Antonelli and Leclerc all did great. Oscar was great, but expected. Sonoda is set to get Red Bull points that are not from Max tomorrow. A good thing. And Yanni also saying, Lando sucks. Laurie Rastogi saying, Hamilton just isn't consistent enough anymore. A couple of stunning performances with lots of okay performances. Verstappen kept complaining about his car. I wonder what he would have pulled off with a better car. Apparently the brakes were terrible. Who knows? If the brakes were better, maybe he would have been 2nd or 3rd on the grid. But yeah, he just wasn't able to manage it well enough to deliver a good enough lap. And with Lando Norris, again, we have expressed many doubts on this channel as to his ability, but I think today is another example of what we've said, is that especially in those pressure moments, Lando Norris has a knack of not delivering, and once again has not delivered, and look how much that has cost him. He should be, at the absolute worst, 3rd on the grid, and he's 6th. Shocking performance. That might be one of the worst performances in qualifying by any driver. Because that car, like I said, should not be outside of the top 3. And he's on the 3rd row of the grid behind an Alpine. And yeah, so is Max. But Max is in a car that is a lot worse than that McLaren. And Oscar will be incredibly happy that Lando is 6th, because if Oscar wins tomorrow and Lando does not finish on the podium, then Piastri will at least go level on points with Norris in the championship if Lando is to finish in 4th. If Lando finishes 5th or lower and Piastri wins, Piastri will take the lead of the Drivers' Championship. So it's a big race tomorrow. Piastri absolutely has to win. Russell and Antonelli, not necessarily, I think. I don't think necessarily they have to win, but at least be on the podium to keep it close. But Norris and Verstappen both definitely need big recovery drives. Yanni saying Hamilton washed his hair and let it down, a signal that he is washed. Supercub says the return of Lando nowhere. Yeah, again, we've talked about this before. I'm probably going to do a video on the state of the Drivers' Championship after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, because I think pretty clearly we've got 4 to maybe 5 drivers in the championship fight on the driver's side. And we will do a look at just each championship contender and how they've done so far. And Lando, yeah, he did well to win in Melbourne. Even though he had his off-track moment, he still handled it well. But since then, Lando has not impressed at all. In Shanghai, he was pretty poor most of the time. Suzuka was a bit better, but he was beaten by Max in a car that just should not be beating him. And now look at what he's done here. Just not good enough. And as you know, I know we've still got the race tomorrow, but from what I've seen so far this season, I think Oscar Piastri is, again, the safer bet for the championship on the driver's side for McLaren than Lando. Because Piastri, not all the time, but more so than Lando, delivers when the pressure increases. When the pressure increases, Lando wilts under that pressure. And you cannot, unless you're miles ahead of every other team in terms of the pace of your car compared to everybody else, you can't win championships like that. You just cannot. The last driver who was like that was Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari to a degree, where he wilted under pressure quite a few times, and look where that got him at Ferrari. He ended up losing 2 championships that he very well could have won. Or at least one of them he could have won. I know there's much debate with the 2017 championship as to whether would he have won it anyway if he had not crashed in Singapore and Baku the way he did. But yeah, I put it this way. Coming into the season, I didn't think Lando would win the championship. But given what I've seen so far, I would be surprised if Lando Norris was world champion at the end of this year. Very surprised. Verstappen, Piastri, and Russell, to me, look more likely to win the championship. And even, with Antonelli, I think it's just a case with Antonelli of waiting for him to get to the point where he can start beating Russell occasionally. I think once Antonelli gets to that point, I think he'll be a pretty clear championship contender. But I would still include Antonelli in the championship conversation because Antonelli is 32 points behind, and for tomorrow's grid is ahead of Norris on the grid, and probably, well, yeah, I think you could say will outscore Lando tomorrow. There's a decent chance of it, and if he does, then I think absolutely you've got to include Antonelli in that conversation. Looney Classic saying Charles is not in any championship battle. Ferrari suck and they will continue to suck, and maybe they will here and there make noise, but they will suck over the course of the year. Agreed. Crystal Racing says Rubens Barrichello regen. And also Crystal Racing saying Hamilton's quali pace is dusted for good. Yeah. Again, there will be the occasional race where he's really quick. Like when we get to Silverstone or Hungary, I guarantee he'll be very quick there compared to Leclerc, but it's not consistently there like it used to be. But I think I will finish up the poll in the chat because we have a clear winner after 87 votes for the question of who is your driver of the day for the qualifying in Bahrain. We have a clear winner. 52% of you have gone for Oscar Piastri. And then Pierre Gasly in second on 25%, Russell third on 14%, and Sainz last on 6%. But guys, that is it for qualifying. Make sure to join me tomorrow for the race watch along. I will be live 2 hours before the race starts at 2 p.m. UK time. That's when we go live to do the usual race build-up, and then we will be doing the race watch along. I will be joined by my co-commentator Niblo tomorrow for what should be a very interesting Bahrain Grand Prix, at least outside of who will win the race. But even that might become very interesting. We will find out. But, yeah, make sure to join me for that tomorrow, for what is going to be a very interesting Bahrain Grand Prix. And then, of course, on Monday, remember, I will be uploading a podcast reviewing the events of the Bahrain Grand Prix weekend. So make sure to join me for all that tomorrow and on Monday. Thanks for coming on today. We've had so many viewers today. The biggest stream, viewership-wise, we've had in a few months. So thank you guys for that. Very much appreciated. If you're new to the channel and you've newly subscribed, hello to you. Good to welcome you aboard. And make sure, if you haven't already, to smash the like button before we go. If you have smashed the like button on this stream, thank you very much. But yeah, it all points now towards tomorrow, and I cannot wait to get into tomorrow's race. I wish it was going to start in a few minutes, because it really is set up so well, especially around a track that thankfully we know, even with these cars, they can overtake. Yeah, cannot wait for tomorrow's Grand Prix. Make sure to join us tomorrow. Thank you guys for coming along for today. And guys, until tomorrow's race watch along starting again 2 hours before lights out at 2 p.m. UK time, it has been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.